Well, hi there. Welcome to ChessBase Workshop. My name is Steve Lopez. I'm your host for this. Thank you for joining us by clicking on that link. It is presently, as I'm recording this, the Sunday morning between Christmas and New Year's. I don't know when you're going to see this. Sometimes they hang around for a while before they get on the internet, and sometimes they hang around online for quite a while. Either way, happy holidays to you. Notice I say happy holidays. I have a close friend, actually more of an acquaintance to tell you the truth, who gets violently angry when you say happy holidays. Apparently he's unfortunately unaware of the fact that there's more than one religion, and there are a lot of people that celebrate a lot of different holidays during the month of December. So I say happy holidays to everybody. That way it's inclusive. I want everybody to have one. Have a safe one too, please. It would be really cool to have you around in 2010, so don't get crazy. Have fun, but don't get nuts. Anyway, we've been looking at ChessBase Light, which is a cut-down demo, if you will, version of ChessBase. It's available for free, I say, free, at www.chessbase.com. You can download it and install it. It is a cut-down version of ChessBase. It does not have all the features of ChessBase. This brings me to a point I don't know if I've made before or not, which is that if you already have the full ChessBase program, you do not need ChessBase Light. Everything that's in ChessBase Light is in ChessBase. However, not everything that's in ChessBase is in ChessBase Light. As I said, it's a cut-down version. There are features that aren't available. But there are a ton of features in this free version, and that's what we've been looking at in this ChessBase Workshop series. And we're going to look at some more of them today on this fine Sunday morning. We're going to look at some more engine features. We were talking about chess engines in the last ChessBase Workshop, so we're going to look at some engine features, some that I didn't cover in the last video. First of all, you need to start an engine, of course, which we go to the engine pane, the engine menu, and select Add Kibitzer, in this case Fritz 5.32, which comes with ChessBase Light, and we see Fritz merrily analyzing this position. In this game, from 1830, Alexander McDonald is playing NN. Now, if you ever see this in a database game or anywhere, NN means no name. Now, that does not necessarily mean a pejorative thing. It doesn't mean that this is some potser that can't play any chess. What it does mean is we just don't know who his opponent was. So NN is the universally recognized means of displaying this in a database or in a chess book, which is NN, no name. We don't know who his opponent was. He might have been a very famous, very competent player, but we just don't know. So this game from 1830, McDonald's just played pawn at d5, threatening the black queen. So the question I have in my mind at this point is, where do you put the queen? The opponent went to b6, and the question I had at this point was, is that necessarily the best place for the queen? And if the queen does go to b6, as the opponent does play in this game, as you see, I've just made the move on the board. Now you've got a threat against the pawn on b2, and you've got a bishop on g5 that's being threatened. There's lots of things happening in this game. So what's the threat here? What's going to happen? What's the best line of play? Is that pawn going to become poisoned later? What's going to go on here is what we're looking at. And the obvious move is what Fritz is talking about, which is, if you'll notice down here in the engine analysis pane, bishop c1. That's not what McDonald played, which also makes this a very interesting position for that reason, at least interesting to me. So that's why we're going to look at some of the engine tricks that you can do here. One of them is this. When Fritz is analyzing a position, people say, well, great, you get all this analysis down here in the engine analysis pane, but how can I play through it? Well, I would counter that with this. The first thing you should try to do, and this is not some excuse, I mean, this is all leading somewhere, try to play through it in your head. It's going to improve your visualization. You don't have, when you're playing chess in a tournament, you don't have a variation board, an analysis board sitting next to you where you can shuffle pieces around to try to find the consequences of your actions. You have to do it in your head. It's called visualization. And looking at these moves in this engine analysis pane and trying to play through them mentally over on this board here is very, very similar. Not similar, it's identical. It's identical to the process that you use when you're playing tournament chess. So I think visualization is important, and looking at these moves, trying to play as far ahead as you can mentally on this board is good for visualization training. However, that having been said, there are two different things you can do to be able to replay the moves on a chessboard within ChessBase Light. First of all, you have to right-click. That's the first step in both of these. One thing you can do, and I believe we may have looked at this in a previous video, is you go to Copy to Notation. Let me back up. Use the right mouse button. I can't show you this, obviously, it's not on the screen, but if you right-click, you get a menu of different commands. And you have to right-click in the engine analysis pane. If you right-click somewhere else, you get other stuff. So you need to go here in the engine analysis pane, right-click, and select Copy to Notation. That takes whatever's in the engine analysis pane and flings it up here into the notation pane where it can be replayed. So let's replay it. Click on Queen B6. And I'm going to use the cursor keys on the keyboard, although you can use the VCR buttons over here under the board, and you can just play through the moves. That way there's no mental exercise. You just play through them and see what Fritz thinks is the best line of play here. Notice, however, that as we play through the moves, every time we make a new move, Fritz stops. You'll see the word stopped take the place of Fritz's name here if I do this quickly enough. And what happens is Fritz stops and then has to restart at whatever the current board position is, which is not the original board position. How do you fix that? Well, I'm going to show you that in a minute. We're going to come back to that idea. That's why throwing the Fritz analysis up into the notation pane may not be the best solution for you. There is another solution. Let's go back to the original position we were looking at, which is after white has played 13 d5. You right-click and you select Variation Board. And this gives you a nice chessboard over here in the engine analysis pane. And what you can do with that chessboard is play through the variation that Fritz is currently considering. Now, you're generally going to want to wait before you use the variation board. You're going to want to wait for Fritz's analysis to settle down. Fritz does not change its analysis speed as it goes to deeper depths. It's still analyzing as many positions per second as it ever was. But what happens is when you get out there to deeper and deeper search depths, it increases exponentially the number of positions that have to be considered, and you just wind up with this huge mass of positions that need to be looked at and evaluated before Fritz can change its analysis in the engine analysis pane. So it looks like Fritz is analyzing more slowly. It's not. It's actually analyzing lightning quick. It's just looking at so much stuff that this appears to slow down. So what you want to do, though, what I'm driving at is you wait to get to some of these deeper search depths. You wait for this analysis to appear to slow down where the preferred line of play isn't changing every few seconds before you get to the variation board, because the variation board is always going to display what's over in this part of the engine analysis pane. So wait for it to settle down before you come over here, and to play through the moves of this variation using the variation board, you have buttons underneath the variation board. You have right and left arrow buttons, which lets you play through one move at a time, as I'm doing right at the moment. Or you can play backwards when you get to the end of the variation, if you want to go back to where it began. And then you have two other buttons here, which jump to the end of the variation using this button right here, the double right arrow. If you use these, the double left arrows, it'll jump you back to the beginning of the variation. So you can very easily navigate through your variation using these buttons as I'm showing you here. So that's a, there we go. That's a way of looking at the variation without having to do the mental gymnastics of playing through it in your head. And this variation board, again, will change depending on what is in the current engine analysis pane, according to the best line of play that Fritz is showing you. If Fritz gets to a 13-ply search depth and changes his mind, those moves will be what's displayed in the variation pane, and that's why, or the variation board rather, and that's why you want to wait for this to get to a pretty decent search depth before starting to play through it. Otherwise, you're going to get this weird mishmash of stuff. So that's how you can play through what Fritz is thinking about. However, we were discussing before that as you play through a game, as we're doing here, Fritz always begins its analysis afresh. Every time you step ahead one move, Fritz starts to analyze from whatever the current board position is. And sometimes that's not what you want. You want Fritz to be able to analyze for quite a while on a particular position but at the same time, you're dying of curiosity. You want to see what happened in the rest of this game. So while Fritz is thinking about 13d5, is there a way, or what happens after 13d5, is there a way to make Fritz stop at this point, or make Fritz continue to analyze that position, not jump ahead as we move ahead through the game, keep Fritz chewing on this one position while we move ahead and look at the rest of the game? And the fact of the matter is, yes, you can do it. I'll show you how. What you do is you right-click. Once again, right-clicking gets you everywhere in ChessBase, by the way. There's a ton of features that you can get to by right-clicking. It's a very useful skill. And it's a single right-click, not a double right-click. You single right-click in the engine analysis pane, and you come up here to a command that says Lock Engine. And when you click on that, what that means is Fritz is going to continue to analyze the current board position as we jump ahead and play through the rest of the game to see what happened. The adventures of Alexander McDonald, how did it all turn out for him? So we can play through the rest of the game, and you'll notice that Fritz, we're a whole way up here at move 19. Actually, White's 20th is coming up. Come down here, you look, you see that Fritz is still analyzing the position with Black to move at move 13. So Fritz is continuing to chew on this spot up here while we're the whole way down here. So that's how you get Fritz to freeze on one position, continue to analyze it as you continue to play through the game. So that's what Lock Engine does. To unlock it then, and believe me, don't do this lightly, because what happens when you unlock it is that Fritz goes back and starts analyzing all over again. I'll show you. Fritz is at a little over a 12-ply search depth at this point. When we go back and we unlock the engine by going right-clicking, selecting Lock Engine again, see it's got a check mark next to it, we're going to uncheck it, bang, and Fritz goes the whole way back and starts analyzing that position over again. So don't unlock the engine until you're ready to have Fritz start analyzing that position over again. Otherwise, all that analysis it did while you were looking at the rest of the game will be lost. So, unlock the engine with caution, when you're ready to do it. Make sure you've looked at the analysis before you unlock the engine. Got one more thing to do here I want to show you, and that's this. McDonald plays this. The pawn goes to d5. Of course, the queen is threatened. The queen's got to get out of dodge. So the queen goes to b6. Now there's two things going on the board. Black actually has two threats at the moment. A pawn can capture the g5 bishop, and the queen can capture the b2 pawn, which could be a poison pawn, maybe, possibly. So the question is, which is the more serious threat? Well, notice that when we're at the position after queen b6, 13 queen b6 for black, Fritz is analyzing, starting with White's next move. 14 bishop c1 is what Fritz is recommending here. But what is a threat? All a threat is what a player could do if he can make two moves in a row. That's a threat. That's the definition of threat. What you would do if you can make two moves in a row. So if black can make two moves in a row here, what would he do? Well, we can have Fritz show us that as well. And the way you do that is you right-click. Again, right-click in the engine analysis pane. And there's a command here called Analyze Threat. And that's what we're going to select, Analyze Threat. You can also shortcut it by just hitting the X key on the keyboard. But that's not nearly as visual, so we're going to do it this way instead. Click on Analyze Threat, and look what Fritz is doing. Black has just moved. It's White's move in the game, but the analysis is starting with a black move. It's showing us what the threat is. And the threat here, which I rather suspected to be the case, is that the pawn will take the bishop. The black pawn will take the white bishop on g5. That seems to be much more of a threat than winning a pawn on b2. But once in a while, these things are a little hidden. There may be a little quirk way out there that may not happen for 5 moves or 6 moves or whatever. So that's always a good idea to look at show threat and see what would happen if a player can make 2 moves in a row. Fritz believes that taking the bishop is the big threat, and I rather suspected that would be the case, but I wanted to double check. So that's what we're doing here. Again, you right click and select Analyze Threat, and you'll see that it's checked. And what that is, that's a reminder that Fritz is currently in Analyze Threat mode rather than in its regular analysis mode. Again, if you uncheck it, Fritz goes back and begins analyzing the current board position fresh, starts over again from the beginning, and begins a new analysis of that board position. So those are 3 little engine tweaks. You've got the ability to have a variation board where you can replay variations right on the screen instead of trying to do it in your head. You've got the ability to lock analysis, lock the engine, so that you can play through the rest of the game and Fritz will still continue to chew on the current board position that you're looking at right here. The other thing you can do is you can select Analyze Threat, and Fritz will show you a threat. In other words, what a player would be able to do if he can make 2 moves in a row. So those 3 new engine features that we haven't discussed before that we'd like to show you in this week's ChessBase workshop. Hope you can make some good use of them in the year to come. As I said, New Year's Eve is coming up here at the end of this week. I'd like to wish you a happy New Year, happy holidays, whatever holiday you're celebrating, and whatever you're doing through this holiday season, until we get together again, I hope that you have fun.